10. I'm 86. The secret from my first night as an Amish wife died with my mother. The quilt under my left hand has one blue square sewn in backward, and I keep rubbing the rough seam because it is the only thing in that room that feels honest. The lamp hisses. The wash water in the basin has gone cold. Outside, a buggy wheel knocks once against the hitching post, then everything goes still. My mother stands on the other side of the door. I know because the third floorboard always groans under her right foot. That night it doesn't. That's worse. Daniel keeps pulling at the seam of his left sleeve, over and over, like he can loosen the fear stitched into him. He is 23. No, 24. I always get that wrong. He whispers, "Your mother said you'd know, but I don't. I don't know what a wife is meant to say. I don't know why Mama won't come in. I don't know why the women who washed my hair that morning laughed when I asked if it would hurt. And I don't know why, before she shut the door, Mama pressed one finger to her lips, as if silence were part of the vow. My toes curl inside my black shoes. I taste lye soap on my skin, and iron where I've bitten my tongue." Then Daniel reaches for the lamp, and from the hallway, my mother says 6 words I carry for 70 years. I am 16 that night. I am 86 now. Quick pause. I'm Sarah, and this is Rebecca Amish Homie. If these stories stay with you, if they make you feel less alone, subscribe. It's free, and it keeps these stories alive. Tell me below, what did silence cost you? And if you want to go further, a super chat or membership that tells me these voices matter. That's what keeps this going. Now, back to what happened. The words were, "A good wife does not refuse." Mama said them so softly that for years I wondered whether I had made them up, whether the lamp had hissed them or the wind had pushed them through the crack beneath the door. But no, it was her voice. I knew the little catch she had on the word wife, the same catch that came when she read aloud after supper and reached a sentence she didn't like. In our church district, marriage meant yielding. The ministers tied it to order. God over man, man over wife, parents over children, each person held in place like the pegs in Papa's harness room. Nobody sat me down and said my body stopped belonging to me when I married. I just knew. I knew from the way women lowered their eyes when a bride was mentioned, from the way the bishop's wife folded her hands when someone asked too much, and from the fact that at 16 I could name every part of a horse's harness but almost none of my own body. That's the thing nobody tells you. Silence can teach a lesson better than words. It lived in small things. At washing day, married women spoke freely about babies, blood on sheets, milk coming in, all of it, but they never spoke about what came before. They would snap wet shirts hard against the line, and if an unmarried girl walked close, the talk changed to weather or beans. Once, when I was 14, I asked my cousin Ruth why Aunt Lydia slept in the sewing room for 3 nights after Uncle Eli came home angry. Ruth stared at the red clothespin in her fingers and said, "You'll understand when you're wed." Then she put the pin between her teeth and walked away. I almost followed her. I almost asked what understanding had to do with a locked door. But across the yard, Mama looked at me without moving her head, just her eyes, and my question died where it stood. Nobody punished me. They didn't need to. I had seen what happened to Martha after she told the deacon she feared her husband. 3 women visited, prayed over her kitchen table, and reminded her to be softer. After that, she smiled too quickly. We all learned from that smile. 3 weeks before my wedding, Ruth pulled me behind the smokehouse, where the ground was still black from winter, and a bent spoon lay near the ash barrel. She gave me 11 words. I counted them later, because I had so little else. "Don't fight him. It goes quicker if you stay very still." Then she rubbed both palms down her apron as though flour covered them, though we hadn't been baking. I asked, "What goes quicker?" She looked toward the house. Mama was trimming pie crust with the dull side of a knife. Ruth said, "You'll know, that was my preparation." Daniel's was worse, in a different way. His older brother Samuel had taken him to the barn after a Sunday meal and told him a husband must be firm but decent. No one explained what decent meant. No one told him fear could look like obedience. And no one told either of us that a marriage vow wasn't the same as a yes spoken in the moment. We walked toward that room carrying 2 empty buckets, each certain the other one had been filled. I had trusted Daniel because he was gentle in all the places people could see. The first time we rode alone during our bundling courtship, he brought a gray lap blanket that smelled faintly of cedar and tucked it around my knees without touching them. He could calm our mare, Nell, by laying 2 fingers against the white star on her forehead and humming one flat note. Once, when my little brother dropped a jar of apple butter, Daniel knelt in the sticky glass and picked out every shard before Mama could scold. He cut his thumb and hid the blood in his fist so the boy wouldn't feel worse. I loved him. I think I loved him. I don't know if I knew what love was yet, but I knew I could breathe easier when he stood near. He asked me once whether I wanted the house with the maple tree or the one by his father's field. That question felt huge. Imagine that. I thought being asked where I wanted a kitchen meant I would be asked what I wanted everywhere else. The bedroom had been Samuel's before he married, and one nail still stuck from the wall where his hat had hung. A kerosene lamp sat on a walnut washstand with a burn mark shaped like a bean. Its flame leaned each time wind slipped through the window frame, throwing Daniel's shadow across the sloped ceiling and then pulling it back. The rope bed creaked when either of us breathed too deeply. Outside, a horse stamped in the packed snow, and from far down the lane came the slow clink of a loose trace chain. I wore a white nightdress Mama had sewn with narrow cuffs that scratched my wrists. The room was cold enough that my ankles hurt, but the skin beneath my collar felt hot. Daniel had removed one boot and not the other. He sat on the chair, bent forward, turning his hat between his hands until the brim made a soft whisk-whisk sound against his trousers. He didn't look like a husband with secret knowledge. He looked like a lost boy who had been told to lead another lost child home. He said, "Sarah, I suppose we should," and the sentence fell apart. I watched his right thumb press into the dent in his hat brim. "Suppose we should what?" I asked, though I knew what the room expected, even if I didn't know the shape of it. He looked toward the door, and for one wild second, I thought he might call for Mama. I almost hoped he would. Instead, he stood and set the hat on the floor with too much care. My hands were locked together in my lap. His were shaking. "Samuel said not to frighten you," he whispered. I said, "Ruth said to be still." We looked at each other then, really looked, and there was a chance in that moment. A small one. He could have asked what I wanted. I could have said I wanted the lamp left on, and the door opened, and another year before any of this. But we didn't have those words. We had duty. We had shame. We had Mama's silence waiting on the other side of the wall. Daniel reached for my hand. I flinched before he touched me, and he pulled back as if my skin had burned him. "Did I hurt you?" he asked. "No," I said. The lie came fast because good girls answered pain before they felt it. He tried again. His palm was cold and rough from cutting fence posts, and mine was damp enough that our fingers slipped. I wanted him close because he was Daniel, the boy who had saved my brother from shame. I wanted him far away because the room had changed him into a rule. Both things were true. He kissed my forehead first, which almost broke me, because it was tender. Then he began doing what he believed a husband was meant to do, and my body tightened against it. "Wait," I said once, quietly. He stopped for half a breath and asked, "Are we allowed to wait?" I didn't know. He didn't know. From the hallway, Mama's 6 words came through the wood. so I pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth and went still. I won't give you details that belong only to the frightened girl in that room. What matters is plain enough. It hurt, I asked once for time, and the answer we both obeyed came from outside our marriage. Daniel kept whispering, "I'm sorry," as if apology and duty could live in the same breath. Maybe they can. That's the thing nobody tells you. I remember the lamp going blurry, then sharp, then blurry again. I counted the tiny red flowers stitched along my cuff, 9 on the left, 8 on the right, and wondered whether Mama had run out of thread. When it was over, Daniel sat at the bed's edge with his face in both hands. I turned toward the wall. A loose strand hung from the blue quilt square, and I pulled it until the seam puckered. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then he said, "Was that how it should be?" I said, "I think so." He lay down without touching me. Between us, the quilt rose like a little ridge of frozen earth. Before dawn, I carried the folded cloths to the basin and understood why Mama had given them to me. The water was so cold my fingers ached, and the chipped pitcher handle caught my thumb. Daniel stood by the door in his shirt and one sock, watching the floor. He offered to fetch warm water. I told him no, because I was ashamed of needing anything. Neither of us understood that fear can freeze a body, or that stillness isn't agreement. We didn't know pain was a reason to stop, not a test of whether I could be a good wife. At breakfast, Mama saw how slowly I lowered myself onto the bench. She saw the cloth bundle beneath my apron. Her spoon paused above her bowl for 1 second, and then she said, "A wife learns." Every married woman who dressed me had known enough to prepare those cloths. Not one had told me I could refuse. Daniel wasn't cruel. He had followed the only map he was given, but only one of our bodies carried the cost that morning. And I carried that. Years later, outside the church, I saw a simple sentence beneath a drawing of the human body. Consent must be freely given, and it can be withdrawn. I read it 4 times. I didn't know a yes could expire. I didn't know marriage didn't turn every future question into an answer already owed. And I didn't know that a body pulling away was speaking, even when a mouth had been trained to say nothing. He wasn't trying to hurt me. That's what makes it worse. We had both been kept ignorant, but only one of our bodies carried the cost that morning. The silence wasn't a missing lesson someone forgot to teach. It was the lesson. It kept wives compliant, husbands unquestioned, mothers from naming their own grief, and daughters walking into the same room with folded cloths and no words. By the time I learned the word consent, Mama had been dead 11 years, and the question I needed to ask her had nowhere left to go. For the first year, I learned to make myself small before nightfall. I finished the dishes slowly, wiping the same blue plate 3 times while Daniel banked the stove, and I listened for the scrape of his chair behind me. By the time the lamp went upstairs, my shoulders were already hard. I learned to leave my mind in other places. The spring house where water ran over the stone lip, the hen house with the crooked latch, the maple tree outside the east window. I named every branch until the room was quiet again. Sometimes Daniel noticed. "Where did you go?" he would ask. "Nowhere," I'd say. That was almost funny, in a dark way, because nowhere became the safest place I knew. We built a life anyway. He planted peas in straight rows, brought me the first ripe strawberry each June, and slept on the floor once after seeing me cry into the quilt. I loved him, and I dreaded his boots on the stairs. Both lived in me, and I carried that. At Quilting Bees, I began hearing pieces of the same story. Not stories exactly. Drop stitches. Ruth would press her needle through a green diamond and say, "Some nights I pray he's tired." Lydia would answer, "Prayer works strange," and everyone's hands kept moving. One snowy Thursday, Martha sat beside me with a yellow shadow beneath one eye. She blamed the pantry door. I said, "Ours swings left." She looked at me then, not angry, just pleading. I wanted to tell her about the blue quilt square and Mama's voice, but the bishop's wife was pouring coffee from the white pot with the cracked lid, listening without seeming to. So I asked Martha whether she needed thread. Her hand stayed on mine for 2 breaths too long. Ruth later told me her husband had called fear temptation after the midwife told her to rest. When she nearly told her mother, the answer came before the confession, "Don't shame a good man." I thought I was the only one. Turns out that was the community's best-kept, best-selling lie. By our 4th year, no, wait, it was the 3rd, because Amos still wore that yellow sock with the heel slipping down, I understood how the silence defended itself. A wife who questioned was told to pray. A husband who admitted confusion was told to lead. A girl who asked was told she would learn. Every road curved back to the same house. One afternoon, our older boy reached for his brother's wooden horse without asking. I caught his wrist and said, "You ask first." Daniel looked up from mending a strap. "He's only 3, he said. "That's when asking starts," I answered, and my hands began shaking so badly I dropped the spoon I was holding. It struck the stove and left a gray chip in the enamel. Neither of us understood why I was crying, but Daniel picked up the horse, gave it back to the baby, and made our son ask. It was a tiny thing, a child's toy. Still, that was the first crack in the wall, and light came through it. The word found me decades later in a public library 2 counties from the last Amish home I knew. I am 75, wearing a brown coat with 1 loose button, waiting for rain to pass because I still hate driving when the road shines black. On a folding table sits a pamphlet about healthy marriage. I almost walk by. Then I see a drawing of 2 hands, one open and one pulled back, beneath a sentence. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. My fingers go cold. The room smells of wet wool and copier paper. A child taps a pencil against a computer desk. Tap, 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 and each sound lands inside my ribs. I sit too fast and catch only the edge of the chair. The pamphlet slips from my hand. Consent. I say it under my breath. My body knows the word before my mind does, and my knees begin to shake. I read that silence isn't consent, fear isn't consent, and marriage doesn't erase the need for consent. I don't feel anger first. I feel grief so deep I press both feet against the gray carpet to keep from folding in half. I grieve for the girl in the white nightdress who thought stillness was goodness. I grieve for the boy with 1 boot on who believed duty mattered more than fear. Daniel had died 8 years earlier, and I wished I could put that paper into his rough hands. He would have read slowly, moving his lips over each new word. Maybe he would have cried. Maybe I would have hated him for crying. Maybe I would have held him. And then sorry, give me a second. We were both prisoners of the same silence, but we weren't wounded in the same way. That's the thing nobody tells you. 2 people can be trapped together, and one can still carry more of the chain. What I grieved most wasn't only that first night. It was the other life hidden beside ours, the one we might have had if somebody had given us 1 honest sentence. We might have learned each other without fear. We might have laughed, stopped, and begun again when both of us were ready. I tried to explain this once to a woman at a church lunch after I left. She wore silver earrings shaped like leaves and stirred her tea until the spoon clicked 12 times. "But you could have just told him no," she said. In her world, no was a word. In mine, it had been a door with no handle on my side. I didn't blame her. She couldn't understand a rule that had lived in my bones before I knew rules could be questioned. I drove home with a paper napkin still tucked beneath my watchband and cried at a red light for the girl nobody had taught to speak. Still, I won't lie about what I miss. I miss horses at dawn, their breath rising white above the fence while the sky turned the pale pink of watered milk. I miss the slow knock of harness rings and the warm hollow behind Nell's ear, where she smelled of hay even in January. I miss bread from a wood oven, the crust singing as it cooled on Mama's scarred table. She always cut the first loaf too soon because none of us could wait, and butter ran into the soft middle while we burned our fingers eating it. And I miss my grandmother's hands when she prayed, blue veins raised beneath skin thin as onion paper, her thumbs rubbing together whenever she named the sick. Those gifts are real. They shaped me. I am homesick for a place that hurt me, and some mornings that feels like the strangest truth I own. Love and grief still sit together at my table. Sometimes I can almost hear Mama's bread knife tapping the board, twice before every cut. The harm has a name too, silence dressed up as holiness. I can say that now without spitting on everything that came before it. Beauty and harm can live in the same house. They can share a table, sing the same hymn, and sleep beneath quilts sewn by loving hands. I don't have to call the bread bitter to tell the truth about the room upstairs. And I don't have to hate Mama to say she failed me. She had once been a frightened girl too, though I didn't understand that until I grew older than she ever got to be. Sometimes I picture her outside my door, one hand flat against the wall, repeating the only sentence her own mother had given her. It doesn't excuse what happened. It keeps her human. What I'm building now is different. Truth without cruelty, faith without fear, and love that asks before it enters. At 86, I'm still learning how to choose all three. If you grew up somewhere your own body was kept from you like something dangerous, I see you. You may have obeyed because obedience was the only safe language in the room. You may have gone still because stillness helped you survive. You survived something, and surviving is enough. You are not broken. The shame doesn't belong in your hands, even if someone placed it there before you were old enough to know you could set it down. And loving people inside that place doesn't make your hurt less true. Love doesn't erase harm. Harm doesn't erase every good memory. You're allowed to hold both, even when other people ask for a simpler story. Put both feet on the floor now. Feel the chair beneath you. Your body is here, and it is listening. It has been waiting a long time for you to believe it. To the one who's still inside, your questions are not betrayal. To the one who left, missing home doesn't mean leaving was a mistake. To the one thinking about leaving, fear doesn't mean you're weak. To the one who's married and only now finding words, you aren't too late. To the one who recognized herself a few minutes ago, breathe slowly and unclench your hands. To the daughter wondering why her mother never warned her, your anger can sit beside your grief. And to the mother who repeated what she was taught and wishes she hadn't, truth can begin with you. I know those sentences don't fix a lifetime. Nothing that small could. But a sentence can open a window, and sometimes air is the first mercy. Wherever you are in this, I see you. And you are not alone, not here. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you felt listening to this, or tell me the sentence someone should have given you when you were young. There is so much more I haven't said yet. I'm just getting started. There are stories I haven't been brave enough to tell, but I'm getting closer, one memory at a time. Subscribe to Rebecca Amish Home E if you want to stay for those stories, because this is where we name what silence tried to bury while still making room for the people we loved. And to the members and Super Chat family, you're the reason the next story gets told. If you want to be part of that, the door is always open. Mama took my question to her grave, but the answer didn't die with her. I found it in a library, printed on cheap folded paper beside a jar of dull pencils, and I'm giving it to you now. Keep it where nobody can take it. Say it aloud when old rules return in new voices. Write it on the first clean page you can find. Your body was always yours.